the Next Normal podcast. We engage in conversations with experts from various industries to help you to future-proof yourself in a rapidly changing world. We do this by curating insights to help you to prepare for what the next normal might look like. My name is Alicia Marach, and I'm joined by my co-host, Maria Vasilio.
Our guest today is Joanna Track, who is the founder and executive publisher of The Bullet, Canada's digital destination for your quick shot of daily news. She is known for her prior entrepreneurial pursuits, such as sweetspot.ca and Elux, two of Canada's most well-known online destinations for women. And on today's episode, we will be talking about the future of content creation. Joanna, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
So we want to know, when you were 8 years old, what did you want to become when you became an adult?
The host of Entertainment Tonight. I used to always say that I wanted that job because I knew I didn't want to be an actor or an actress, and that way you could be in like the whole Hollywood movie star scene, but not actually have to do the acting. So that's what I aspired to at 8.
It's a good goal to have, and it kind of goes into topics that we'll be discussing later on in this episode when it comes to like influencers in the media.
Amazing. And we're also joined by your adorable dog. What's your dog's name?
Yes, that is Stevie Wonder. If you hear him bark, then you might assume he's a German Shepherd, but really he's a 17-pound Cavapoo who has a very loud bark, but is the sweetest little thing in the world.
Amazing. Again, that theme of entertainment, you wanted to go on entertainment. You named your dog as well. So in addition to your passion for content creation, I know that you have a Bachelor's of Arts in Mathematics and from Western University, as well as an MBA in Finance from Schulich School of Business. With that background, I'd love to know what initially drew you to the world of digital content, and in what ways have you seen this background help equip you for some of your current roles?
So I majored in math and then in finance I excelled in that sort of skill set of numbers and analytics, and just had a natural aptitude towards it. And along with that, just really did not enjoy any courses that involved writing. So essay writing was my nemesis. And so part of my motivation to take those majors was to avoid essays as much as possible. And it wasn't that I wasn't good at them. I was like an average student, but it caused me so much grief and anxiety, and the math came so naturally. So it sounds funny that I took the easy route by majoring in math, but for me, that was the easy route. So the fact that I ended up building a career in content and publishing is somewhat ironic and funny. If you had told me then, I would say that was never going to happen. After my dreams of being a host of Entertainment Tonight waned, I used to think I was going to be an actuary or work in finance, that kind of job. So this would have been laughable to me at that time. But what happened was I ended up building a career in marketing and advertising through a few other shifts in my passions and opportunities. And was inspired by some models I'd seen in the US for digital property, email-based property. And so in 2004, when I started my first business, SweetSpot, I had zero experience in editorial content publishing, and digital was still a relatively new concept. So I essentially jumped off a cliff into a completely new industry. I think part of the magic of what made it great was because I came at it from a more consumer facing point of view, as opposed to like my editorial journalistic expertise. And then to answer your question about what I brought from my degrees is the analytical problem solving, the way I break down issues. And also, if you have followed those publications, SweetSpot and now The Bullet, it's all about taking complex information and simplifying it. So really, it's just I've taken that mathematical thinking and adapted it into how I develop content.
I subscribe to The Bullet right now. You are able to dissect the information that's in it in such a tangible way. It's so easy to digest. It's refreshing to read your
Thank you,
newsletter
and
in the
that's the
morning.
goal. So I'm happy we achieve it.
So it sounds as if you came with the perspective of as a consumer, as you mentioned, as opposed to like an insider viewpoint. When you had founded Sweet Spot, it was acquired by Rogers in 2004. And around that time, Rogers was acquiring other digital properties, which led to some of them being integrated into the larger media sales ecosystem. This resulted in the way that the businesses were conducted, along with the type of content that they were putting out for those businesses. Many of them, unfortunately, quickly dissolved after their acquisition from Rogers. What would you say small businesses are doing well when it comes to content creation and content marketing in relation to consumer relations? And what's unique that they're doing in comparison to big businesses? And what could big businesses learn from them?
So I'll answer it two ways. First, to address, what I think the small companies do better than the big companies is there tends to be, and I don't want to generalize, but I think we could all say most of the time, there is a more authentic voice to the smaller publications, the entrepreneurial ones, versus the big ones have a much more bland, conventional tone. Whereas the ones that have gained a lot of popularity have either a bit of sass or a very strong opinion, whereas traditional media try really hard to walk a very balanced line, which unfortunately ends up being somewhat vanilla. And I mean, there's a place for them. I'm not saying that shouldn't exist, but in today's landscape, I think, people are just tired of it. And when they have so many other options, they're going to go to the thing that suits their purposes better. When Rogers acquired my business, as well as like another 8 or 10 other publications, they tried to bring us into their ecosystem, as you say, and have us operate like them. What I had said to them back then, and still stand on my position, is they should have let those businesses continue to run as entrepreneurial ventures, but with the access to the resources that Rogers provides. I literally had said to them, you need to put one person in charge of this and run it like an incubator, like a side venture, but instead they tried to fold it into all the other, bureaucratic processes that come with being as large as Rogers. So I just fundamentally disagree with that. Everybody likes to think big. It's a lot harder for people to think small.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said the incubator. When you say that, I think of Microsoft and how they acquire gaming companies. And their approach is similar to how you mentioned, where they acquire them and they just kind of let them do their own thing with access to everything that Microsoft has to offer. Right. And it seems to be working for them.
Yeah, it works a lot better, clearly. And then the last thing, that small businesses do better, whether it's because out of need and necessity, but I think it's also just the way they're built, is they're more nimble, more reactive, more keen on working collaboratively with their clients and their readers and their audience, as opposed to, I find a lot of big companies, again, generalization, they like to deliver, this is what we have for you, both from like what they offer as their product or service and also what they offer to their client base. And it's like prescribed, and there's not a lot of flexibility or nimbleness in what they have to offer.
Amazing. I know one of the things you mentioned earlier is importance of thinking small, and you also mentioned that what sets you apart is that you were looking at it as a consumer. You went in to with that mindset. On that note of what we consume and how much we consume and how we do so as consumers, we've seen that is rapidly changing, and so content marketers are also adjusting their channels and their formats accordingly. We've seen that even before COVID, that there was a lot of difference in one single years in terms of whether the channel was a written one or images versus in person and the like, and I'm sure COVID has accelerated this. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about how COVID has impacted the landscape in terms of what we consume and how we do so?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I'm stating the obvious, but we've all, I think, have a greater appreciation for e-commerce. So even though e-commerce has been around a while, it really got its moment right now, because there are a lot of people who would say, oh, I would never buy so-and-so or whatever online. And now it's opened up their eyes, even the older generation. So with e-commerce comes a lot of content consumption. I always say a product description is content. So they all need to be developed in a way that is friendly to the user. You know, in the world of like retail and e-commerce, the way you write that description, the size, the feel, the fabric, the fit, all those things gives the user more information, which means they can make a more informed purchase, which means there's less likelihood of them returning it or having a complaint about it. Returns and complaints are what kill an online business. So the content is critically important. Then the outreach, newsletters, and going outside of the e-commerce. I thought even before COVID that newsletters were having a resurgence. I'm biased. I live and breathe, and I'm very passionate about it. But you can see around us that new publications are cropping up all the time. It's like social media had its moment. I'm not saying it's dead. It's still alive and well. But it's kind of like the Goldilocks. Certain mediums are too long, traditional newspapers, other media. Social media is very short, and email gives you just the right amount of information, and it also allows you to really go vertical in, if there's something you're passionate about, you can always find a newsletter or publication that I find these days that, meets your desires. And then I'll just add that during COVID, what we've seen as a business at The Bullet is significant increase in engagement in the newsletter. So the open rates and click-through rates, as people had, more time, were on their computers more, and obviously more keen to know what was going on in the world.
Do you think that's also because people are looking for avenues that they know that they can trust, as opposed to, for example, some social media outlets can be biased? Do you think e-newsletters in particular are one of the more trustworthy outlets that there are right now?
I do. I agree. And I think part of the reason too is email is the only avenue that you completely opt into, and people can't get to you without your permission. So social media, a ton of stuff comes in your feed that you never asked for, and it slips in such a way that, you don't know the credibility or where it came from. Even your own mailbox at home gets filled with stuff that you didn't ask for. Email, now, once in a while, you might get something you didn't sign up for. With the click of a button, it's gone and you never see it again. So email is permission-based. You asked for it, you put up your hand, and you're saying you're interested. So, it lends itself to, I think, greater credibility and trust for that reason.
So Joanna, you spoke a bit about how the changes, the space is already changing. And one of the things that I'd love for us to talk about is, we know that influencers and micro-influencers have become a staple in the world of content creation. In fact, the Kardashians, who are household names as influencers. The space is still changing, and we're seeing trends of influencers starting unions and groups so they can better demand to be paid what they estimate that they're worth. And we're also seeing the rise of virtual CGI influencers like Shudugram and Michaela Sousa, avatars, if I can call them that, who can transcend boundaries and borders, and that's particularly important during COVID. I'd love to hear where you see this space going.
So my gut sort of visceral reaction is like, oh, it's a fad. I don't know if that's my age, or, I'm a cynic, or I spend too much time in the media, but I actually do have an appreciation and respect on the whole for the concept of influencer marketing and being an influencer, because Sweet Spot, for those that are familiar, that was influencer marketing before there was influencers or social media. So, we were influencing people by sending this newsletter and telling them, check out this restaurant, check out this new product. And to this day, 15 years later, I have people tell me that because of that blast, their traffic to their business like completely exploded. So what we're seeing is just now a new way of doing something that has been done for a long time. Product placement, all the kinds of things that have happened in the past was all influencer marketing. But I guess, with everything, there's the good and the bad. And we hear a lot of the bad stories about, influencers, they're charging six figures for, 1 second, and they're not making it very clear that they're being paid for it. All of that stuff, it muddies the waters and gives the whole thing a bad name. And I do have cynicism towards that. And I hate when I hear brands or clients say, oh yeah, like we're going to spend our money. We found this influencer. And I just always say, like, put the brakes on for a second, figure out, is that the best bang for your buck? Is that, of all the things you can do, like, don't get caught up in the romance of it all. Just, really go back to your business objectives and determine if that's right for your business. Because like this 1-second hit from Kim Kardashian, like it might be good for the short run, but maybe there's, a dozen or so, not even micro influencers, but more niche, audiences that might get your point across with more authenticity. So I just caution people. And what I'm seeing right now that I really love is that
influencers, as we're seeing them right now, we all think of, like you said, the Kim Kardashians and social media and Instagram, but there are other ways of creating influence. So again, going back to the newsletter, I mean, what we do even now in my weekly blog, that is kind of considered being an influencer. And I'm advising currently a lot of, independent proprietors and business owners to start their own newsletters, become an influencer in their niche industry. And these can be like anything from like executive recruiting to law. I mean, it doesn't have to be all the sexy, beauty cosmetic stuff that we see. And there's other ways of like building up your reputation and getting paid by brands to share a message because of your experience. And it doesn't all have to be taking sexy photos and posting them on Instagram.
It sounds as if we have to pay attention to our initial brand mission and vision and remembering the purpose of what we're doing. I also recall when I was first in the agency realm, we always used to talk about the main thing that we'd have to get would be emails signups, because that shows people have a genuine interest in what you're talking about and how you're talking about it.
To me, I always say an email database is an asset. It's actually a huge asset to your business. That's like customer data, which we know can go sideways quickly, but that's why we have to hold it in such high regard. Absolutely. Whereas a social media following, I mean, they're mostly nameless, faceless, not necessarily real. And just because they're following you, someone could be following you, but have not logged into Instagram in 6 months. I mean, what does that mean really?
We're also seeing an increase in the use of bots. So a lot of the those accounts might actually not be real people,
right?
As well.
Essentially, everyone's becoming an influencer to a certain degree, or a thought leader, because everyone's creating their own type of content. What would be your advice to these people or these brands in terms of like cutting through all the noise?
It sounds really cliche, but it's you do you. If your brand represents something that is, say, I'm just thinking of someone I spoke to yesterday who's looking for some support, and she's got years and years of experience in the environmentalist space, recycling, conservation, all that stuff. Is she going to go, is her primary channel going to be, TikTok and Instagram? No. But she's got to find the method, figure out your brand purpose first, and then figure out which channel is best suited to your audience to get the message out, not the other way around. And I find that a lot of brands do that the other way around, right? They want to know what they're going to look like on a certain social media channel versus like, what's the end game here? And so for people who are starting up now, I always say too, like, you don't build traffic overnight if you're doing it the ethical, sustainable way. So you need to build organically. You need to build a small following. You need to have them learn to trust and appreciate you and engage with your brand. And then they're going to tell other people. And then you're going to have some money that you're going to be able to cast a wider net, through advertising or other promotional channels. And then you can continue to grow in that way. And once, build it first, then try to monetize it.
It's also funny whenever I hear brands say that their audience is everyone, and
yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can't. Not everyone is your audience. There's niches that you have to target.
I agree.
And I love that you brought up the ethics of content creation and brought up kind of the broader social value of it. I know that there's a lot of discussion right now taking place around, gender and racial discrimination, and a slew of other issues, with there being the saying to put your money where your mouth is for businesses. And there's a lot of public pressure for them to hire a more diverse workforce and to put out more diverse products and content. And previously, the claims had been that there just isn't a business case for having diverse content. And we've seen that challenged with both, for example, if we're looking to Hollywood, with Frozen 1 and 2 being the highest grossing and second highest grossing animation movies in history, and Black Panther being grossing about 1.3 billion. And we've also seen Netflix starting to pump out very diverse and original content, with their survey saying that young American viewers want to see their lives and identities reflected on TV. And we know that millennials and Gen Z in particular prefer to have media with diverse casts, diverse ads, diverse representation, and having their brands take these social stances. I'd love to learn a little bit more about where you see diversity going in the space and what are the important points to note, particularly because we realize that the old business as usual model has gotten persons in hot water. An example being Becca Cosmetics, where they photoshopped the hand of a white woman to be darker to showcase inclusivity instead of hiring a Black hand model. So I'd just love to kind of learn from you what you're seeing in the space, and what are the guardrails? What do we need to be thinking and talking about together?
Mm-hmm. So what I've seen, I kind of see sort of two buckets, the good and the bad of what's going on right now. The good, and again, in the world that I exist in digital is very democratizing. I mean, especially like the channels that we've been speaking about, you don't see who the people are behind it. You don't hear their voice, what they're wearing. You don't even know if someone's male or female. You're taking it at its face value, pun intended, that, if that content is of value to you, you're consuming it. And who or it came from is secondary, the actual face behind it. So I think digital has done a good job of democratizing, giving opportunities to people to get their messages out there on an equal footing. The bad that I've seen is, well, like the ad that you give as an example, but the contrived ads, we've all seen them, the TV ad where they have the token African-American and the token Asian woman because, some people sat around the table at the bank and said, we're going to show that we're diverse and and it just looks not authentic. And I think I have no patience for that when there are so many ways to do it well. The example I would give is NYX. The way they do it, it does not feel like they were trying to tick boxes. It's like they get it, they understand women, they look at every woman and find the beauty in all her, features and flaws, and they share it. And it just comes off, you really believe in them. And for me, I buy in and I get that emotional connection builds because I don't feel like they're trying to pull something over on me. I think right now, what people they can look at the good examples and try to emulate. It's easy for me to say, you've got to give people an equal chance, but we know if it was that simple, it would be happening for a long time already. But I encourage people, again, because of the world I live in, to, utilize digital in all its magical ways.
Sounds like we're coming back to the whole discussion about authenticity and trust. That's the bottom line across the board.
As we talk about the digital transformation of digital, we're already seeing emerging trends like AI, big data, VR, AR, all the typical jargons that are that we tend to talk about, as well as trends towards personalization and customized content, high interactivity and engagement, and the rise of content intelligence in the space. How are these technologies change? How are they doing that now, and how are they continuing to change what and how we consume? And if we were doing a thought experiment and we could fast forward to 2030, I'd love to get a sense of what your vision of where the space might be and what would have changed.
The short answer is I have no idea. But the long answer that backs that up is that what I have seen over my years, and I have a few on you, and I was alive and an adult before the internet, so even that, a quick story I'll tell is that when I started my first year MBA in 1993, on the first day they gave each of us an email address, and I remember saying to my friend, like, what the hell, I'm not going to use this, what's it for? And for 2 years I never used the email once. Now look at my life. And so the point is, like, these things, they become part of our lives, and we get used to them, and they become the norm, and we don't know how we ever live without them. But all they are new versions of the same thing we've always done, you know? Before email, there was mail, and before cars, there were horses. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's just communication and distributing information when it comes to content. And I find that, you know, the written word is the written word, and whether you say it or write it or podcast it or whatever you do, it's the what you say, and then the medium it comes out is secondary in a way. So all of these things, to answer the question originally when you said, you know, how are they going to impact? I don't know, because they're gonna find their way in to help us get messages out. But at the end of the day, we all like to hear good stories. You know, storytelling never dies. It's been around since the beginning of time. The written word has been around since someone invented it, and those things will continue. So, you know, years ago when they said newspapers were dead or TV was dead, like, neither of them are dead. It's just different.
So I'm hearing as things change, there's some things that will remain constant through the arc of time, and that would be the human interaction, the human connection, the storytelling pieces of it, and the need to really stay informed and stay connected to each other.
Absolutely.
Out of everything that we've discussed today, or perhaps if we missed something accidentally, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of content creation and the digital landscape?
Well, the thing that I've loved the most, I mean, for me and the people I've mentored and businesses I've seen grow, it goes back to what I said before about the democratization, the tools that are in place, and the channels that have become available for more people to take a shot at putting their content out into the world has become easier. The price of entry has become lower. An example, you know, when I started Elux in 2011, it cost us upwards of $300,000 to build the website to support all the e-commerce infrastructure. And today we could do it on Shopify for free. So I could be bitter about that, which I am at times, but on the whole, I love that. I love that tools have come along that make it easier for everyone to have a chance to build their dream, and things like Squarespace and all these things that just MailChimp, they make it easier and easier. If you have a good idea, that you should give it a shot.
So it sounds as if there's more opportunities for accessibility in this realm.
Yeah, and I think there will continue to be.
Amazing. So today we've talked about credibility, trust, authenticity, big versus small businesses, and how they compare to the way they engage with consumers, and accessibility. And we've learned a lot. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I was so happy. So lovely to chat with you both.
Thank you so much.